As human beings, we are different. Sometimes we get along, some other times we get into conflicts. The latter differ based on the nature of the relationship. Some conflicts, however, lead into tragic endings, such as the case for this Australian lady called Catherine Knight, who was sentenced to life imprisonment for the brutal killing of her lover John Price in October 2001. She stabbed him to death, then cleaned him so as to serve some parts of his body in conjunction with vegetables on plates, accompanied with place cards of his children's name. But before we start, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell to turn on notifications. Catherine Mary Knight, also known as Katie the Cannibal, was born on 24 October 1955 in Aberdeen, Australia. Her mother, Barbara Ruthen, was in an adulterous relationship with her father, Ken Knight. He was an alcoholic who was openly violent and sexually abusive to Barbara, even in front of their kids. As a child, Catherine was sexually assaulted by different family members. As a result, she grew up with distrust and hatred of men. Because of her traumatic rough childhood and family problems, Catherine dropped out of high school at the age of 15, so as to work in the Aberdeen slaughterhouse. She did, indeed, love her job, as she frequently alluded to it as her dream job, especially the tool part, which she delightfully used in butchering the pigs. This led her to feel unstoppable. This is to say that her set of blades gave her a sense of primacy and control. 3 months later, Catherine met a person called David Kellett, a co-worker and a friend of her brother's. He eventually fell in love with her and asked her to marry him, thinking that they would cherish a happy, joyful life. So, they got married in 1974, despite the fact that the mother advised Kellett to be super cautious around her, stating, "You better watch this one, or she'll kill you. Stir her up the wrong way, or do the wrong thing, and you are screwed. Don't ever think of playing up on her, she'll kill you." Around a year later, Mary Knight got pregnant. In spite of their constant conflicts, their conflicts were like the typical kind of conflicts. One night, Kellett arrived home late from a darts competition. So, just for the sake of it, he ended up on the floor of his neighbor's house, in fear of his life, after being knocked by his wife with a Syrian skylight. He was treated for a severely broken cranium, and when the police needed to charge Catherine, she managed to talk Kellett into dropping the charges. In May 1976, their first child, Melissa Ann, was born. However, at the time, Kellett left Catherine for another woman and moved to Queensland. For an obvious reason, he simply couldn't cope with his wife's possessive violence and behaviors. The next day, Catherine was seen aggressively pushing her new baby in a stroller down the main street. This, of course, indicates Catherine's mental instability. Thereby, she was taken to St. Elmo's Hospital in Tamworth, where she was diagnosed with a postnatal depression, spending several weeks recovering. Well, for those who don't know, postnatal depression is a type of depression that happens after having a baby. Therefore, as soon as Mary Knight got over her depression, she was released. But unfortunately, by the time she got out, she placed the 2-month-old Melissa on a railway line shortly before the train's arrival, then stole an axe from a hardware store, heading to town and threatening to kill several people. Luckily, no one got hurt by Catherine, as she was arrested and taken back to St. Elmo's Hospital, but she apparently fooled the doctors that she was in a good state of mind, and signed herself out the following day. You are probably wondering what happened to the baby. Thank God, a man known in the district as Old Ted was passing by near the railway line when he found and rescued Melissa. By all accounts, only minutes before the train passed. So, to recapitulate, The acts of losing Kellett drove Catherine to behave in such a way. Accordingly, a few days afterward, Catherine slashed the face of a woman with one of her favorite knives and ordered to drive her to Queensland in search of Kellett. But before hitting the road, they stopped at a gas station where Kellett used to repair his car. The lady hostage managed to get away looking for help, but by the time the police arrived, Catherine had already taken a little boy as another hostage, threatening to kill him with her knife. The authorities, though, were able to take her down. Except due to her mental record, she was taken to the Morisset Psychiatric Hospital instead. During her accommodation, she confessed to the nurses that she had the intention of killing the mechanic at the gas station, because he had fixed Kellett's car and made it possible for him to leave her. Back in Queensland, the police informed Kellett of what Catherine had done, and despite this threat, Kellett took Knight back when she was released from the hospital on August 9, 1976. The couple had spent 4 years together. When another daughter called Natasha was born, however, their reunion didn't last long, leading Mary Knight to undergo a period of deep distress. In 1986, shortly after her breakup with Kellett, Catherine Knight jumped into a whirlwind romance with David Saunders, who worked in an iron mine company. Within few months, Sanders moved in with her and her 2 daughters. However, he kept his apartment, and Catherine became incredibly jealous and suspicious about what he did when she wasn't around. Like her previous relationships, this one rapidly developed to become harmful and savage. At one point, she slit the throat of his 2-month-old dingo puppy in front of him, just to show him what she was capable of doing. Still, they remained together, and even had a daughter a year later. However, Saunders left Catherine shortly after the birth because she had attempted to kill him with a pair of scissors. This breakup didn't scare Catherine the way Kellett did. Hence, she moved on with her life as if nothing had happened, which brought about her next relationship with John Price, a divorcee with 2 children living with him. He really enjoyed Catherine's company. They fell in crazy love and eventually moved in together in 1995. At first, things were going smoothly. They had their own love story. Nonetheless, Catherine felt like moving a step forward, so she suggested marriage, especially that John made enough money as a miner. But as she proposed the idea, John panicked and totally refused it. As a result, Catherine went crazy on her boyfriend, to the extent of framing him for stealing things from his company, getting him fired. Thus, they went separate ways. But when things cooled down, they started seeing each other again, without having to live together. And according to their friends and neighbors, Mary Knight's violence began to escalate at that time. In February of 2000, however, an argument between Price and Knight culminated with her attempting to stab him in the chest. He took out a restraining order against her in an attempt to keep his children safe. Toward the end of the month, Price let on that he was concerned for his safety and told his co-workers that if he ever went missing, it was because Knight killed him. On February 29, 2000, Price came home from work and followed his usual routine of checking in with the neighbors before going to read at 11 p.m. Knight came home shortly after, made herself dinner, watched TV, showered, and then went upstairs to wake Price. The two made love, and John went back to bed. As stated earlier, Catherine loved her plates. That night, she really lost her nerves. She took a butcher knife from next to her bed, where she had always kept her knives, stabbed Price 37 times non-stop. Catherine went even further. After Price's death, she used her skills from the slaughterhouse to skin John completely and hung it, using a meat hook, then decapitated the body and dumped the head into a pot with vegetables in it. Catherine cooked up his head and a few parts of his body and placed it on 2 plates, alongside serving baked potato, vegetables, and gravy. She put 2 name cards with the names of John's children. Luckily, the kids were sent to a sleepover, otherwise, they would have eaten John's flesh as she desired. Catherine attempted to commit suicide. She ingested numerous pills, but she merely passed out. The police found her and Price's body in the house after a tip from a neighbor, who had noticed that Price's car was still in the driveway. Having knocked on his door to check in on him, the neighbor noticed blood on the doorknob. Catherine Knight was charged with the killing of John Price on 15 October 2001, but at first she argued not blameworthy, claiming that she recalled nothing from that night. She afterward changed her supplication without giving a reason, and the jury was dismissed. Despite entering a guilty plea, Catherine has not admitted to the crime she committed. Because of Knight's grotesque actions and lack of remorse, the judge said the last minutes of his life must have been a time of abject terror for him, as they were a time of utter enjoyment for her. The judge absorbed that Catherine was an ongoing risk to the community, so he foresaw the only appropriate penalty for the prisoner is life imprisonment, and that parole should never be considered for her. The prisoner should never be released, he stated. Catherine is the first woman in Australia to be sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. She is now detained at the Silver Waters Women's Restorative Medal in New South Wales. Before finishing up, we would like to clarify that despite being labeled a cannibal, Catherine never ate John Price or any other human. But we would be more than happy if you shared your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below concerning this matter. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss more videos of crime and mysteries and much more interesting stories. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.